A Bridgeport man facing serious charges for reportedly molesting a 10-year-old girl. KNEB.TV News starts right now.
From your trusted source for news in western Nebraska and eastern Wyoming, this is KNEB.TV News. Presented by Platte Valley Companies, premier provider of financial services.
Hello, I'm Ryan Murphy. This is KNEB.TV News, powered by Platte Valley Companies. Thanks for joining me. In our top story, a 33-year-old child sex offender from Bridgeport is facing new charges after reportedly molesting a 10-year-old girl. Jesse Dean Russell was arraigned earlier this month in Morrill County District Court on charges of third-degree sexual assault of a child with a prior conviction and intentional child abuse with no injuries. Court records show that the arrest came following a capstone interview and investigation by the Morrill County Sheriff's Department. Russell has pleaded not guilty to the charges and will be back in court in early June for his pre-trial conference. If found guilty on the more serious charge as currently filed, Jesse Dean Russell would face a prison sentence ranging from 5 to 50 years. Well, the city of Scottsbluff is becoming a premier destination for one of the region's biggest softball tournaments, and organizers are seeking funding to help ensure the 2025 SummerSlam is the best one yet. 308 United Softball President Krista Sarchette spoke before the Scottsbluff City Council last week, seeking more than $5,000 in funding. She says the tournament has grown immensely since its inception, and this year's event is expected to bring in thousands of people from nearly 50 teams from a 4-state area. Sarchette told the council that this specific funding would cover the cost of high-quality umpires for the salary and lodging expenses.
But if you don't have quality umpires, the level of play goes down, and then you have parents yelling at kids. If there's not quality umpires, they're not going to come back. So we realized that we really had to change the way we were approaching. We went from paying $20 to $25 a game. Umpires last year were getting $50. We want to up that this year to $60 per game.
Following the 10-minute presentation, the Scottsbluff Council gave unanimous approval for the $5,100 funding request for the SummerSlam, which will take place the last weekend of June. And this week, the Alliance City Council adopted a micro-tax increment financing program aimed at encouraging small-scale property improvements and infill development throughout the community. MicroTIF is a tool that enables owners of residential or commercial properties receive a tax incentive to repair, rehabilitate, or replace an existing structure or redevelop vacant land property that may not be large enough to qualify for regular tax increments financing. This tool empowers local property owners, small businesses, and developers to improve properties, revitalize underutilized lots, and stimulate investment in targeted areas. A project will qualify for MicroTIF if it involves the repair, rehabilitation, or replacement of an existing structure that has been within city limits for at least 60 years, or the redevelopment of a vacant lot that has been within the city limits for at least 60 years and has been platted for at least 60 years. We'll have more news right after this.
Whether you're gardening, searching for the perfect vacation home, or planning your next travel destination, your life is just as unique. Your Raymond James financial advisors, Jody Rosiska and Kevin Figg, get to know you, your passions, and your vision for the future, so you can live your life. That's life well planned.
When it comes to your health, you deserve the very best. At Morrill County Community Hospital, they provide top-notch care with compassion and expertise. From routine checkups to advanced surgeries, their dedicated team is here for you 24/7. With state-of-the-art technology and a patient-first approach, they ensure you and your loved ones receive the highest quality care. Because at Morrill County Community Hospital, your health is their priority. Visit Morrill County Community Hospital today in Bridgeport. Morrill County Community Hospital. Exceptional care right here at home.
Fly United Airlines, operated by SkyWest with Western Nebraska Regional Airport. United is dedicated to going the extra mile for you with daily flights to and from Denver, along with a commitment to excellent service. Reserve your flight today, and remember, United miles can be earned and redeemed with your flights. While at the airport, stop and enjoy authentic Italian food at Roma Italian Restaurant. Plus, Hertz Thrifty Car Rental is there for your car rental needs. Make life easier, relax, and get on board with Western Nebraska Regional Airport.
Welcome back. Two of the top leadership posts at Regional West Health Services became vacant this week as CFO Jeannie McCarrigan and Chief Network Officer Craig Krentz are no longer with the organization. In a release, Regional West President and CEO Ned Resch says they're incredibly grateful for Jeannie, her work in the accounting department, and her work as CFO during the epic conversion this past year, and are grateful for Craig's contributions to the health system. No information was released regarding the nature of and circumstances surrounding the departures of either McCarrigan or Krentz. It was also not immediately announced who would fill the roles on an interim basis, nor the process of seeking successors. And the Nebraska State Patrol is joining law enforcement agencies from across the country in a drug-impaired driving enforcement mobilization that will run now through April 20th. This weekend, troopers will be working overtime in an effort to reduce the likelihood of serious injury or fatality crashes. Troopers will be patrolling for all unsafe driving practices, including impaired driving. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration reports that the prevalence of drug-impaired driving is increasing across the country. In Nebraska, troopers have made an average of 80 arrests for driving under the influence of drugs in the last 3 years.
Welcome to Kelly's Liquor, your liquor cabinet. Whether you're a wine enthusiast, a whiskey sommelier, a tequila connoisseur, or you just love your beer, Kelly's has the best selection of what you're looking for. Family owned and operated since 1946 and right on 27th Street in Scottsbluff. Come see us today at Kelly's Liquor, your liquor cabinet. And remember to be a good neighbor. Don't drink and drive. Kelly's Liquor, West 27th Street in Scottsbluff.
I imagined retirement in a place where we could enjoy our golden years, where adventure and friendship are the only items on the schedule. The Garden Homes at Northfield gives us the luxury we planned for and peace of mind when it comes to convenience, safety, and comfort. We never have to stop and think about the day-to-day upkeep. We love to explore abroad, but most importantly in our backyard. So much to do, so much to see. Here at Northfield, we get the protection of life care, incredible tax benefits, and secured rates for aging services. It's peaceful, knowing that if our needs change, we'll be taken care of. And most importantly, that our kids will never have to make any tough decisions. There never seemed to be enough time to do all the things we wanted. Now we get to focus our energy on enjoying what this community has to offer. At the Garden Homes, life is ours again. A place we had dreamed about. A chance to focus on us.
Welcome to this week's Nebraska Soybean Board Weekly Market Roundup. I'm Brian Stuski, joining you here on what was a short trading week. We'll be breaking that down with two commodity brokers. They're standing by to give us their take on what we saw in the corn and soybean markets in particular. Maybe we'll get a couple of cattle questions in there. Darren Newsom, and I should say Darren Fessler and Jeff Peterson, our two guests this week. We'll have them join us here in a second. But first, a message from the Nebraska Soybean Board.
It may be small, but this little bean fuels a lot of power. It powers a food industry as a top source of protein. It's a fuel that powers diesel engines with fewer emissions. It powers a state economy and bottom lines. And it powers the rest of the world as a top Nebraska export. Yeah, it may be small, but we're finding more ways for this little bean to power Nebraska.
And welcome back as we welcome our two guests to the stream. For those of us joining on video, Jeff Peterson, he's the president of Heartland Farm Partners, as well as Darren Fessler with Lakefront Futures, our two guests to break down what they saw this week. Jeff, I want to start with you, get your big picture thoughts on kind of the market sentiment and current action we saw as we close things out here early because of the Easter holiday. In general, corn and soybeans retreat heading into the close with slow volume. What do you make of the kind of lack of conviction in the trade?
Well, I think you summed it up very well there, Bryce, and talking about that lack of conviction, because overall we've got items from the bullish and the bearish side. But, I feel pretty good about the market overall here. We did find a base of support, especially over on the corn side. We found that back, yesterday. We came in to found some support. So that was good to see. And ultimately, if you really kind of think about it, it's kind of a transition. We had a chance to get planting going, 4% planted on the corn, 2% planted there on the soybeans. And then we also had everything that was going on from the trade talk side. and you've got some progress being made there. So that was kind of helping come into this market. And as we think about really what's going to drive this market as we look forward, we really have to take a look at the weather and what impact that's going to end up having. But overall, I think it was a pretty solid week from what I ended up seeing.
Jeff, you bring up weather. That's why where I wanted to go next with Darren. We do have some potential for some rain, some systems, maybe some damaging conditions and portions of our listening and viewing area today. But Darren, how important is it to get the right conditions for this crop to have this market support us moving forward through the planting season?
Yeah, I think there's a definite divide between the eastern corn belt right now at the moment, but probably with too much rain, especially across the parts of southern Illinois, Indiana, and obviously Kentucky, Tennessee. We know that they've been pretty darn wet, and we're pretty dry here in the west. We're needing some rain here. And again, there has been talk of guys starting pivots to get some herbicides going and chemicals and going before the planters run. So again, we're definitely dry in the western belt. We're needing rain. Again, I think that if we get the rain here across parts of Iowa and even maybe in the eastern parts of Nebraska, does it shore up enough confidence with maybe this big acreage number that we had last month that, is it a little bit of cause of posh or a cause in the price action that we've seen here, which has been really, really solid. We're getting back up towards that 62% retracement. We've been bullish momentum here. And so again, what happens in the trade here, or what happens in the fundamental side to really calm this market down here? Again, demand's been very, very solid, and I think that's a huge driver here. And obviously the weaker dollar has been a big contributing factor here, I think, to a lot of the grain strength.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can talk more about that dollar here in a second. But Jeff, bringing you into the conversation when it comes to folks you've been visiting with and traveling out across the countryside, what are you hearing about planting conditions? There hasn't really been any delays across our region thus far.
Yeah, it's really the tale of two planting seasons, and it seems like we say that a lot here the last few years. In the eastern side, eastern corn belt, east of the Mississippi, and then down into the southeast, you've got conditions that they're really wet. And you've got additional showers that are coming in, as Darren pointed out, southeast Kansas, over a good portion of Missouri into, probably the southern 40% of Illinois into Indiana and parts of Ohio. We're going to see too wet conditions. So there's, in northern Illinois, I think they had a chance to get some planting done this week. As we move back here into Nebraska, as we're planting, most guys are able to get the seed in some type of moisture. Not all cases, though, so they really do need a rain to come in here. As we move on up into parts of northwest Iowa into Minnesota, there's definitely some dry pockets up there. Overall, I'd say everybody's hoping for rain. Now, what will quickly happen in here, and I think we've had some good support in this market based off of some demand, but with the amount of acres that we do have to plant, as we start looking at that weather forecast ahead, everybody's going to welcome that to get some conditions here in the west to go ahead and activate that chemical, as Darren had pointed out, and also to get a good germination and even stand. But we'll quickly have to watch and see, do we start backing up and delaying off of our normal planting pace? And that's definitely a possibility that we could run into.
Mm-hmm. Darren, back to the futures market. Soybeans, I'm going to categorize them a little bit stuck. What has to happen to get soybeans to break out of their pattern? They're kind of in a sideways trend at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, last couple of days have been a little bit sideways, but over the last couple of weeks, it's been solidly higher, even in the face of tariff news. I mean, China bought a record amount of soybean from South America just last week here, and so again, a lot of the trade is going against the grain, more of a contrarian type trade here. It's doing what most people probably think probably shouldn't happen and move higher. Again, I think it just goes to show that there's still demand for this market. When you look over year total commitments, corn's still up, beans are still up, wheat is still up. Again, there is demand from our products, whether China has been buying much or very little at all. So again, I think at the end of the day, it's about momentum, and it's about what may or may not happen here. We still got to get the corn and beans in the ground here, and we may not have a lot of beans here if we do have some weather, like Jeff alluded to. If the weather turns hot and dry again, you can't have half the corn belt wet and half the other one not getting enough rain here. I think there's a lot of uncertainty about yet play themselves out.
Jeff, building on that point, I want to bring up the soybean market and help you wrap my brain around the soybean complex, because it didn't make a lot of sense to me, but there's people like yourself smarter. So help me out here a little bit. when it came to all of the tariff talks and the soybeans, initially we went down just like every other commodity did with the April 2nd announcement of tariffs. But then soybeans bounced just back up with corn and wheat and other commodities when the president announced a 90-day pause on most of those. But we did exclude China, which is our largest importer of soybeans. Was that because traders had already priced things in when it comes to our relationship with China, or is there other factors at play?
Well, I definitely do think that was because they had priced in. We ended up seeing that on the corn side. We also saw it over there on the soybean side. The market came down and finally found some decent, support in that area. And that happened really back there on about, April 7th. And then since then, we've just been trading this market up higher. And I think the market did get physically, oversold. As we've came in, we have still seen some pretty good exports, and Darren pointed that out very well. If you look at it, even on the soybean side, year to date on the sales, we're up 13.3%. USDA believes we're going to be up 7.7%. Something I think we need to kind of, look back and see how things happened on the last administration when Trump was in and we had, these trade talks and discussions. Remember on these tariffs with China, when you've got say like Sinograin and to a lesser degree Kofco, but on Sinograin, if they're buying for the reserve, so if there is a tariff in place, if they still need beans, the thing to remember, you've got a tariff going against a government entity basically. So really, is there a tariff? Mm-hmm. So I guess in some cases is if you've got the government-owned or state-owned entities buying bushels for the government, is there really much of a tariff in place there? I mean, that's something we kind of got to think about.
Mm-hmm. Interesting point. Darren, at this point, if you've got clients that have old crop around, are you encouraging them to move corn and soybeans?
We've been sold out of old crop corn for a very long while now. We had some early sales on back in 23 and early in 24. So we've been all sold out of old crop beans. We're 85% sold on, or 100% sold on corn, 85% sold on beans here. But I would be taking advantage of this move on old crop and probably even new here just to lay off some risk here. I mean, again, when you get to that 50 to 62% retracements from a recent move on the Fibonacci's, usually that's a decision point for a market, whether to make a decision to move lower in this case or to trend higher here. But again, we've had a nice move here about every 40 cents here in corn. We want to reward about 50 to 70 cents in beans. We're going to scale in here and continue to reward.
Jeff, as we turn to next week after the Easter holiday, we all resume this kind of activity Sunday night for the grains and then in earnest on Monday. What matters most to you? What are you going to be watching?
Yeah, I would say things we're going to be keeping a very close eye on is that we want to watch and see what's the progress on these trade talks. We know that we are making some progress. We know we've got delegations in from Japan with discussions going there. We also know the heads of coming in from Italy and really that's kind of a fact-finding mission also from Europe to kind of see what can be done there. We know there's probably 13, as high as some are estimating, high as 16 different trade agreements that are being evaluated in addition to all the countries that want to have discussions about trade. So we're going to watch that. We also do want to keep a close eye on South American weather. Just want to make sure we don't forget about that. So far right now, weather looks fine down there. Yeah, they're getting very close to wrapping up harvest on, for Brazil, moving along. About 26% of the corn's harvested for Argentina and about 3% harvested on the soybean side. So, and then we'll keep our eyes focused very quickly on planting pace and then also what the weather looks like in the U.S.
Darren, when it comes to these trade discussions, is it your sense that the president, as if one of us could go inside the White House and understand what's going on, but is it your sense that the president wants to renegotiate and come to agreements, or that he does want the tariffs to try to rebalance things?
I think he's using the tariffs as a negotiating tool to rebalance trade overall. And obviously, I think the biggest one is China. And I think that he feels that, they have been treated unfairly, if you will. To put it in his own words, really. And so, again, I think that whether the tariffs are 250% or 1,000%, I mean, China, if they need to buy a product, they're going to buy a product. And if the problem is come next fall and next winter, if Brazil ever has an issue with beans, what's China going to do? Not buy? So, again, I still think, like Jeff said, they're going to still buy regardless of tariffs or not tariffs.
Yep. Good point. Well, we've got to put a bow on our conversation for this week. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Darren Fessler with Lakefront Futures, as well as Jeff Peterson with Heartland Farm Partners joining us As part of the weekly market roundup brought to you by Nebraska soybean farmers and their checkoff. I'm Bryce Tuskett on the Rural Radio Network.
Military, first responders, teachers, Renewal by Anderson is offering a heartfelt thank you with its first ever appreciation sale. 20% off every window and door, no money down, no interest, and no payments for 18 months. Plus an additional 9% off if purchased on the initial consultation. That's 29% off. Military, first responders, teachers, this is a limited time offer, so do not wait. Please book your free estimate right now at rbawyoming.com.
Let's take a peek at your weekend community calendar brought to you by Riverstone Bank. The community calendar is brought to you by Riverstone Bank. We're local and we love our community.
You deserve to have a building that will last for generations. With more than 110 years of experience and thousands of satisfied customers, Morton Buildings is the industry leader you can trust. If you're planning for a garage, farm shop, horse barn, storage building for your RV, boat, or collectibles, there's no better time to buy. Contact your local Morton sales office or visit mortonbuildings.com to get started today.
At Platte Valley Bank, we want to help you take advantage of every adventure. We know you have plans, goals, and dreams. Let us help you with them. Whether it is building, buying, or renovating, we have the home loan or home equity line of credit to fit your needs. Stop in and see us at Platte Valley Bank and let us help make your dreams a reality. You belong here. Platte Valley Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
And finally tonight, teams are being sought for an exciting new fundraiser for the United Way of Western Nebraska. United Way of Western Nebraska Director Karen Benzel tells KNEB News that Pizza, Pours, and Puzzles will be an evening where you can enjoy delicious food and engaging challenges with your family and friends. Teams of 4 will compete to complete a 300-piece puzzle, eat 1 large pizza, and drink 2 beverages, soda for kids.
It's Pizza, Pours, and Puzzles. It's a fun, competitive night out either with your family. We have a family-friendly flight, which is from 5 to 6:30 p.m. on Saturday, May 3rd. And we also have an adults-only section as well, and that's later in the evening.
The event will be held on May 3rd at the Weborg 21 Center. Cost for this fundraiser is $120 per table. And for registration and more information, go to the United Way of Western Nebraska's website. Well, that does it for us this time. Thank Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great weekend. See you back here on Monday.